Hi, everybody. My name is Shaylin Parker. I am an advocate and educator with Green Amendments for the Generations. I'm really excited to be on tonight with our launch of the People's Action Guides. Not one, but two guides being launched tonight. You can see them here on this screen. We've got our People's Action Guide to secure constitutional green amendments, as well as our People's Action Guide to uplifting and enforcing green amendment protections. Now, the key difference between our two guides here, this one that we'll be talking about in this meeting, our guide to secure constitutional green amendments, is specifically designed for states who don't yet have green amendment protections but are actively organizing to get them in place. Our other guide is for our three states, soon to be more, that currently have green amendments, which are Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York. When you go ahead to request your downloadable copy of the guide, you will be able to download both of them. There's a lot of overlapping information since it's really important to have that foundational knowledge of green amendments that's just helpful to everybody, regardless if you live in a state that already has those protections or not. So I do encourage you, if you're curious, feel free to check out both of them. Tonight we'll be talking about our guide, and I'll be pointing out some of the unique sections in our guide to secure constitutional green amendments. So on this call, I'll also note that we're assuming that folks are generally familiar with the Green Amendment concept. If you are not, we have many resources on our website, and I can also make sure to link them in our follow-up to this meeting. But if we're breaking down green amendments in some of their simplest terms, we're talking about Bill of Rights, constitutional environmental rights that protect our human right to clean air, pure water, a safe climate, and healthy environments. And if you've been actively engaged in the language process in your own state, you might know that there are some other environmental rights that different states highlight depending on their unique environmental values. So certainly it doesn't stop just here. We know that green amendments are specifically put in place to protect the rights of present and future generations. There is generational language in green amendments, which is really beneficial, especially when it comes to climate change protections, and that's something that we talk about in our toolkit here. And we know that green amendments are protections for all individuals, regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, tribal affiliation, or anything. Green amendments should be equally and equitably applied to all people. Now, talking about the concept of green amendments, you know, you can lay that out pretty quickly, but it gets a lot more complicated when we talk about actually securing a green amendment and advocating for one. So these kind of walk through some of the questions that we had in our minds, or questions that great advocates like you have brought to our meetings, that we wanted to, write down strategies in order to answer these questions or accomplish some of these goals. So hopefully we've done that in our toolkit. But we know that green amendments require amending the state constitution through votes of the people. So it's not just a one-sided grassroots movement to accomplish a goal. There is simultaneously a legislative process, and immediately that can seem a little intimidating to folks, especially if you're not someone who is as familiar with the legislative process and how a bill moves through your state government, let alone a constitutional amendment. There are many people who are unaware of the power of green amendments, even in states that have them. So we asked ourselves when we were making this guide, how do we approach people and educate them and empower them with this information? How would we approach organizations, entire communities? And again, this is the work that a lot of our state coalitions have been undertaking. So we've been able to pull from our experiences there to deliver a rich body of work that you can use in your advocacy. Most importantly, how do we share the information in an accessible way? And how do we answer questions that come up? Especially when you talk about some of the more legal foundations of green amendments. I know for me, not being having a legal background at first, I felt a little intimidated by that, but this guide really breaks it down and makes it accessible to understand some of those concepts and get to a point where you feel comfortable having a conversation. And moreover, this guide gives you the power to answer questions, but also feel confident in saying, I don't know the specific answer to that question, but I know someone who does, because hopefully this guide has connected you with a bunch of resources, physical or resources like Maya, our founder, who will have the answer to your question that comes up. We know that green amendments, securing them and advocating for them requires the effort of an entire coalition. So the million-dollar question, how do we build one? These are the questions that we've tried to answer with making our People's Action Guide here. Um, and hopefully they will be your tools for securing and uplifting Green Amendment protections. Let's talk a little more about what is inside the guides. You will find, it starts general and then gets more specific. So we'll start off with an overview of the Green Amendment concept. We talk about how green amendments work, give a little bit of background on that legal framework that I mentioned before, and even some specific uses or specific benefits of green amendments in the climate change spaces, in the environmental justice spaces, and a few others in the toolkit we'll see in our table of contents. We touch on how green amendments have made a difference and different advocacy and legal successes that we've seen in states that have green amendments. We'll talk about how to secure a green amendment in your state, again, touching on the grassroots components of, various meetings or outreach methods you can use to engage your community, along with tips if, for example, you're going to a hearing before a committee in your legislature that's about the green amendment. We provide a big list of recommended resources and even more. So instead of just talking about what's inside, let's go ahead and jump inside. Take a look at our guide. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is just a little reminder that we do have two versions with unique content for states with green amendments and states in the process of securing them. So I'm going to switch over my screen now and pull up this PDF. Hopefully everybody can see this here. I've got it blown up big just so we can all read the font, but this is what our toolkit looks like. We've got it in a digital format that you can download, but I'll go over in a bit how you can request print copies if that's just your preferred medium of taking in this information and having, access to your toolkit. Here we've got our table of contents. You'll see some of what I was talking about earlier. This first section here is talking about, some background on green amendments, how the movement started, where we're at now, and also just the general concept of what is a green amendment. Then we get a little bit more specific with the mechanics of how a green amendment works, and some of those essential criteria for green amendments that you might have heard Maya talking about in, specific coalition meetings. We've got our section on how existing green amendments are making a difference. This one has a bunch of different specific examples, both legally and from advocacy perspectives, so you can understand the true power of green amendments that is ever growing. While we're going through the guide, I'm going to focus on our sections here, this section, how to get a green amendment in your state, because this is going to be the unique section for this guide versus our other guide for states with green amendment protections. And I also want to just show our section here on attempts to defeat a green amendment and how to respond, because this is something that many of our advocates have found helpful, like when we have our frequently asked questions documents, just to feel equipped and confident in talking about green amendments and particularly responding to some of the false narratives that the opposition tries to peddle around green amendments. So, um, this is just, scrolling through a little bit of the guide so you can get a basic idea of the layout. I'm not going to go through every piece since I'll leave you to do that after our call ends today. But I will just note that throughout the entire guide, you will see little blurbs encouraging you to reach out to us. Um, Green Amendments for the Generations as an organization, we want to be a resource for all of your Green Amendment efforts, for all of your questions that come up, and most importantly, to be partners and uplift you in your state's Green Amendment movement. So please feel free to reach out to us with questions on this guide, and particularly if you or a group that you work with would like us to give you a personalized presentation on the contents of this toolkit, maybe we want to dive into a certain section, we would be more than happy to do that. There are some links within the guide, and also I will make sure that you'll see on the slides later on that I have an email where you can reach out to us. So let's go ahead and jump to our section on how to go about securing a green amendment. Um, so again, I'm not going to read through this, but it's just to give you an idea of some of the strategies that we lay out in our toolkit. And also just some of the little motivational messages that we put in there. Again, at the end of the day, we're always going to encourage you to reach out if you are feeling alone or you feel like you need any sort of support or just a cheerleader for the great work that you're already doing. We are here for that. But in this section, we really try to start from ground zero in case you do not have any previous experience in advocacy or activism. So we go through some of our basic concepts of, partnering up, how to find other individuals or organizations that you could join in coalition with for your Green Amendment efforts, getting some background knowledge on what you're advocating for. If you're in a state where you don't yet have Green Amendment language, we have some information here about how you go about pulling together that quality language. Of course, especially for this step, you'll want to reach out to us. We're here to help and also here to provide the expertise and all of that knowledge on the legal nuances of Green Amendment language. Then this is, probably my favorite part where we actually talk about how you can gather large groups of people together, get some real engagement around the Green Amendment. Um, we talk about different strategies you might use, like organizing a speaking event. We highlight our ambassador program, which I know some people on the call here tonight are ambassadors. Shout out to all of you. We give some resources. You might want to host a movie screening or a book club, make use of, all of the content that we already have available so that maybe you yourself don't feel as comfortable with public speaking. We provide all of that information for you if you just, have an internet connection and can hit play on a video. The power of press and social media, and how you might go about engaging in a local issue and connect your Green Amendment movement to that local environmental issue, because that's a great way to inform other people about your state's Green Amendment movement and also demonstrate the power of, what's valuable about a Green Amendment to this issue that this community is experiencing. So you'll notice that, not all of these blurbs are too long, and that's because a lot of them link to other more detailed resources. We didn't want to put every piece of text we've ever written up in this one guide. Rather, we thought it would be more helpful, if you're interested in learning more about writing a letter to the editor, you can go to that specific resource. But we just wanted to be able to lay it all out in one place. And I will also shout out another really helpful resource is our Green Amendments Action Platform. That is the primary way that we encourage our coalitions to stay connected because it is a Green Amendment specific platform. It's secure. We see anybody who registers to sign up, And you can post about your state's Green Amendment movement. We have specific communities for each of the states, as well as communities for our ambassadors, so we can make those cross-country connections and talk about our shared experiences and give advice to one another. So, of course, there's some info here about how you can get on the platform yourself if you're not already. We have some other strategies like building business support. Again, here's our section on heading to the legislature, um, including tips on providing public testimony, since that might be a new experience for folks. And now this is the other section that I wanted to highlight here, different attempts to defeat a Green Amendment and how to respond. So we've hopefully laid this out in a way that makes sense, where bold here, you'll see some of the assertions or misconceptions that are put forth about Green Amendments, and then we give you pretty detailed responses on to those assertions, and either dismantling an underlying misperception, or clarifying actually a piece of misinformation that might be present in the assertion. So these might be really useful for your advocacy efforts if you are talking with people um, who maybe you're not familiar with, who haven't heard about the Green Amendment concept at all before. So this, we think, is going to be a really powerful part of the guide, and building that groundswell of support around Green Amendments and Green Amendment values. So I'm going to hop back to my presentation now. Again, this was just to give you a taste of what the guide looks like. Here's our last page, where again, we have so many other links to more detailed resources if there's something that you think would be particularly helpful to your individual or coalition efforts. But I will jump back in here. On the screen right now, if you're on your computer and maybe your phone's to the side, you can pull out your phone and scan this QR code. You'll be taken to a page on our website where you can fill out a simple form. It looks really simple, or really similar to, our general membership form that you may have already filled out. And then once you've enter all of your information, you'll see two links appear, two hot links where you can either download this version we're talking about for states working to secure Green Amendments. And if you're curious, you will also get a link if you want to download our guide for states with Green Amendments. Again, there's a lot of similar information, but towards the end of the guides, it gets a little bit different, because in the former guide, we're talking about how you might go about using your state's Green Amendment protections and putting them to work. So, and Maya has put these links in the chat as well. So if you're on your phone or on your computer and you don't want to pull out your phone, you can just click those links right there. Again, you'll be taken to our web page and see the form to fill out. And like I mentioned before, if you want a personalized presentation, or if you have any follow-up questions about this guide, you can email us at gaftg@forthegenerations.org.